The first panic attack happened on the L train. Tuesday morning, October 15th, 2018. I was 23 years old on my way to work at a small accounting firm in Williamsburg. The train was crowded, but not unusually so. The normal press of bodies, the smell of coffee and perfume, and the metallic tang of the subway itself. I was standing near the doors, holding the pole, scrolling through emails on my phone. Then my heart started racing, not gradually, suddenly, violently, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed. I looked up from my phone, tried to take a deep breath, couldn't, the air wouldn't come. My vision started narrowing, tunneling down to a small point of light surrounded by darkness. My hands went numb. Tingling spread up my arms. I'm having a heart attack, I thought. I'm 23 years old and I'm dying on the L train. The train pulled into Bedford Avenue. I stumbled off, pushed through the crowd, made it to a bench on the platform before my legs gave out. Sat there gasping, sweating, shaking, certain I was dying. People walked past. A few glanced at me. No one stopped. It lasted maybe 10 minutes. Felt like hours. Gradually, my heart slowed. My vision cleared. The numbness faded. I could breathe again. I sat on that bench for another 20 minutes, too scared to move, trying to understand what had just happened. I went to the emergency room. They ran tests. EKG, blood work, chest x-ray. Everything came back normal. The doctor, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, said, "You had a panic attack." A panic attack? I wasn't even anxious. I was just riding the train. Panic attacks don't always have obvious triggers. Sometimes they just happen. She gave me information about anxiety disorders, suggested I see a therapist, wrote a prescription for Xanax for emergencies, and sent me home. I sat in my apartment that night staring at the pill bottle, trying to process what she'd said. Panic disorder, anxiety. But I'd never been an anxious person. I was organized, methodical, good at my job. I didn't have anxiety. Anxiety was for other people. The second attack happened 3 days later, at my desk at work, middle of the afternoon, no warning. Same symptoms. Racing heart, couldn't breathe, vision tunneling. Absolute certainty I was dying. I stumbled to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and waited for it to pass. The third attack happened on the subway again. I got off at the next stop, took a cab home, told myself I just needed to avoid the subway for a while. The fourth attack happened in the cab. Within 2 months, I was having panic attacks almost daily, on the street, in stores, at work, at home, sometimes with identifiable triggers, crowds, enclosed spaces, public transit, sometimes with no trigger at all, just sudden overwhelming terror that would flood my system without warning. I started avoiding the things that triggered attacks, stopped taking the subway, started taking cabs everywhere, then stopped going places that required cabs because what if I had an attack in the cab? Stopped going to the office, told my boss I needed to work from home for health reasons, stopped seeing friends, couldn't handle restaurants or bars or anywhere with crowds. My world started shrinking. By January 2019, I'd stopped leaving my apartment except for essentials. Grocery delivery, therapy appointments when I could manage them. Everything else happened inside a 600 square foot radius of safety. My bedroom, my living room, my kitchen, that was my entire world. My name is Maya Ortiz. I'm 30 now, but I was 28 when rock climbing saved my life. Between 23 and 28, I lived in a prison of my own neurology. Agoraphobia, born from panic disorder, the fear of fear itself. Every day was a negotiation with terror. Could I make it to the bodega 3 blocks away? Could I check my mail? Could I open my curtains and look at the world I was no longer part of? I tried everything. Therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, EMDR, medication, SSRIs, benzodiazepines, beta blockers, meditation, breathing exercises, yoga videos on YouTube. Some things helped a little. Nothing fixed it. The panic was always there, lurking, waiting to strike without warning. I lost my job. They were patient for a while, let me work remotely, but eventually they needed someone in the office. I understood. I was 24 years old and unemployed, living on savings that were rapidly depleting, trapped in an apartment in Bushwick. I lost most of my friends. They tried at first, came to visit, brought food, tried to coax me out. But after months of cancellations and excuses and watching me sit frozen on my couch, unable to walk to a restaurant 3 blocks away, most of them drifted off. I didn't blame them. I was exhausting to be around, a black hole of anxiety that sucked the energy out of every interaction. My parents, first-generation immigrants who'd worked brutal hours to give me opportunities, didn't understand. Just push through it, my dad would say. Mind over matter. You're stronger than this. My mom was more sympathetic but equally helpless. Have you tried chamomile tea? My cousin's daughter had nerves and chamomile helped. I tried to explain that it wasn't nervousness. It was a malfunction in my brain's threat detection system. My amygdala was firing danger signals at random, flooding my body with adrenaline and cortisol in response to no actual threat. It was neurological, chemical, not something I could will away or steep in hot water. But they couldn't really understand. How could they? They'd crossed borders, worked minimum wage jobs, raised kids in a country where they didn't speak the language, and I couldn't leave my apartment to buy milk. The worst part wasn't the panic attacks themselves. Those were horrible, but they passed. The worst part was the anticipatory anxiety, the constant fear of having another attack. Every moment outside my apartment, my brain was scanning for danger, for the first signs of an attack, which created the very anxiety that triggered attacks. A perfect, vicious circle. By my 27th birthday, I'd been essentially housebound for 3 years. I was living on disability payments, seeing a therapist via Zoom, ordering everything online. My apartment was safe, controlled, predictable, and I was dying inside it. I'd have good days sometimes, days when the anxiety was lower, when I could think clearly, when I'd feel almost human. On those days, I'd make plans. I'd tell myself, tomorrow, I'm going to walk to the coffee shop. Tomorrow, I'm going to call a friend. Tomorrow, I'm going to start living again. But tomorrow would come, and the anxiety would come with it, and I'd stay inside. March 20th, 2023 was a good day. I woke up feeling okay. Not great, but okay. The kind of okay where maybe I could push a little. Test my boundaries. I'd been reading about exposure therapy, about how avoiding triggers just reinforces fear. The way to overcome agoraphobia was to gradually expose yourself to the feared situations. I decided I'd walk around my block, just once around. 4 blocks total, maybe 10 minutes. Small goal, achievable. I made it 2 blocks before the panic started rising, heart rate increasing, breathing getting shallow, the familiar warning signs. I could feel the attack coming, could feel it building like a wave about to crash. I needed somewhere to go, somewhere to sit down, somewhere safe. I looked around desperately and saw, half a block ahead, a storefront I'd never noticed before. Brooklyn Boulders in big letters, some kind of gym. The door was open. I stumbled toward it. Inside was a rock climbing gym, 40-foot walls covered in colorful holds, people in harnesses climbing roots, the sound of hands slapping rock and bodies moving. I stood in the entrance trying to breathe, trying to stop the panic spiral, and a woman at the front desk said, "You okay?" I need to sit down. Sure, no problem. There's a bench over there. You need water? I sat, focused on breathing. The panic didn't fully develop, maybe because I'd distracted myself, maybe because the new environment gave my brain something else to process. After a few minutes, my heart rate normalized. I looked around. Really looked. People were climbing, all different ages, body types, skill levels. Some were 40 feet up, others were practicing on roots close to the ground. They were focused, completely present, not worried about the past or the future, just the next hold, the next move. First time here? The woman from the desk had walked over. 20s, athletic, friendly smile. I don't climb. I just needed somewhere to. I stopped. How did you explain panic attacks to strangers? Bad day? Something like that. Well, if you want to try it, first-time climbers get a free intro session. No pressure, but it's a good workout. Good for the head, too. I almost said no, almost left right then, but something made me stay. Maybe it was the good day I'd been having. Maybe it was 3 years of being trapped. Maybe it was seeing people so completely absorbed in physical movement that there was no room for anything else in their heads. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll try it. Her name was Zoe. She got me set up with rental shoes and a harness, showed me the basics, how to tie in, how to belay, how to read roots, took me to a beginner wall, a section with large holds called jugs that were easy to grip. Don't overthink it, she said. Just move. Your body knows what to do. I started climbing, put my right foot on a hold, gripped with my left hand, pulled myself up, found the next hold, the next one, moved slowly, carefully. My heart was beating fast, but not from panic, from exertion, from focus, from the strange combination of fear and excitement that came from being off the ground. I made it maybe 15 feet up before my arm started shaking. "That's great for a first time," Zoe called up. "Come on down." I climbed down, stood on the mat. My arms felt like jelly. My hands were sore. I was sweating, and I felt present, fully in my body in a way I hadn't felt in years. "How was it?" Zoe asked. "Terrifying." Good terrifying or bad terrifying? I thought about it. Good. I think? I'm not sure. But different. Different from the usual fear. She nodded like she understood. Climbing's weird like that. It's scary, but it's a controllable scary. You can see what you're afraid of. You can practice it. Get better at it. It's not like life where bad things just happen randomly. I stared at her. That was exactly it. Climbing was objectively dangerous. You could fall. You could get hurt. But the danger was visible, measurable, governed by physics and technique, not random neurological misfires. When I was on the wall, my brain had a real threat to focus on. It couldn't manufacture phantom dangers because there was an actual danger right in front of me. And when I was focused on not falling, I couldn't also be panicking about having a panic attack. My brain could only process one existential threat at a time. "Can I come back?" I asked. "Anytime. We're open 7 days a week." I came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. At first, I'd only climb for 15 or 20 minutes before my anxiety would spike and I'd have to leave. But gradually, I could stay longer, climb more routes, push a little harder. Rock climbing gave me something I hadn't had in years, measurable progress. In therapy, in medication, in all my attempts to manage panic disorder, progress was subjective and often invisible. Did I feel less anxious today than yesterday? Hard to say. Anxiety doesn't measure itself in units. But climbing was concrete. Last week I couldn't reach that hold. This week I can. Last month I topped out at 5.7 difficulty. This month I'm climbing 5.8s. Progress was visible, quantifiable, real, and the community helped. Climbers were welcoming in a way I hadn't expected. They'd offer beta, advice on how to complete a route. They'd cheer when you finished a difficult climb. They'd commiserate when you fell. There was a culture of encouragement and mutual support that I desperately needed. I met people, made friends, real friends, not just social media connections or old contacts I'd lost touch with. People who climbed together, grabbed food after, talked about routes and technique and life. One of them was Marcus, a 32-year-old software engineer who climbed at the gym most evenings. He had a quiet confidence I admired, moved up the wall with efficiency and grace. We started climbing together. I'd belay for him, he'd belay for me. "You're getting strong," he said, one evening after I'd completed a route that had shut me down for weeks. "Thanks. I couldn't have done this 6 months ago." "What made you start climbing?" I hesitated. Didn't usually tell people about the panic disorder. It was easier to just say I wanted to try something new. But Marcus felt safe somehow. "I have panic disorder. Had. Have. I don't know. I was basically housebound for 3 years. One day I had a panic attack near here and ran inside to sit down and, I don't know, something about climbing helped." Marcus nodded slowly. "Makes sense. Climbing's very present tense. Can't think about yesterday or tomorrow when you're trying not to fall." "Exactly. I climb for similar reasons. Not panic attacks, but depression. When I'm on the wall, I'm not depressed. I'm just climbing. It's the only time my brain shuts up." We looked at each other with the recognition of people who'd both struggled with their neurology, who'd both found something that helped even if they couldn't fully articulate why. "Want to try the lead wall sometime?" he asked. "It's scarier than top rope, but it's also more rewarding." Lead climbing was different from top rope. In top rope, you're attached to a rope that's already threaded through an anchor at the top of the wall. If you fall maybe a foot before the rope catches you. In lead climbing, you clip the rope into quick draws as you ascend. If you fall twice the distance from your last clip plus rope stretch. It's more dangerous, more commitment, more psychological challenge. I don't know if I'm ready for that. No rush. But think about it. You're strong enough. Just a mental game at this point. Mental game. That's all panic disorder was, really. A mental game where my brain had forgotten the rules and was playing against itself. I started lead climbing in month 8. It was terrifying. That first climb, clipping into the first quick draw 15 feet up with nothing but air below me, I almost backed down. My hands were shaking, my breath was shallow, every symptom of an oncoming panic attack. But I couldn't have a panic attack, because I was on a wall, and panic would make me fall, and falling would hurt. My brain had to choose. Panic about the abstract possibility of panic, or focus on the concrete reality of not falling. It chose not falling. I made it to the top, clipped into the anchor, looked down at Marcus belaying below, at the gym spread out beneath me, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Triumph. Not relief that something bad didn't happen, not gratitude that I'd made it through. Actual pride in accomplishing something difficult. "Clean climb," Marcus called up. "How do you feel?" "Alive," I shouted back, and I meant it. By year 2, I was climbing outdoors. Real rock, not gym walls. Marcus took me to the Gunks, Mohonk Preserve in upstate New York, about 2 hours from the city. Classic East Coast climbing. Multi-pitch routes up rock faces with views of the Hudson Valley. I was terrified. Outdoor climbing was different from gym climbing in every way. The holds weren't marked with colored tape. The rock was rough and unpredictable. The routes were longer, more committing, and there was no climate control, no padded mat, no staff to help if something went wrong. But I went. Drove up with Marcus and 3 other climbers from the gym. Camped overnight. Woke up at dawn and hiked to the base of the cliff. I stood there looking up at the rock face, 150 feet of gray stone rising into the sky, and thought, I can't do this. Then I thought, but I want to try. We started up a route called High Exposure, rated 5.6. Moderate difficulty, but exposed, meaning you feel the height more than usual. I climbed behind Marcus, following the route he led, clipping into the protection he'd placed. Every move required complete focus. Every hold had to be tested, every foothold evaluated. 50 feet up, I made the mistake of looking down. Saw the ground far below, saw how high I was, and felt the familiar panic start to rise. Heart racing, breath shortening, the beginning of a spiral. "Maya, look at me." Marcus's voice from above. I looked up. He was anchored at a ledge, secure, watching me. "You're okay. You're on good holds. Just breathe. Look at the rock, not the ground. Next hold is just above your left hand." I focused on the rock, on the texture under my fingers, on the next move, just the next move. The panic subsided. I kept climbing, made it to the ledge where Marcus was waiting. "That was scary," I said, voice shaking. "Yeah, it's supposed to be, but you pushed through. That's what matters." We finished the route, stood on top of the cliff looking out over the valley. I'd just climbed 150 feet of real rock. I'd faced down panic at 50 feet and kept going. I'd done something I couldn't have imagined 2 years earlier. "I think this is the furthest I've been from my apartment in 5 years," I said. Marcus looked at me. "The furthest physically or the furthest mentally?" "Both." He smiled. "You're doing great, Maya. Really great." I started working at the climbing gym in year 3. Just part-time at first, teaching intro classes and belaying. Eventually more. Route setting, managing the gear rentals, leading workshops. The pay wasn't great, but it was income. Real income from a real job that I could actually do because I was there every day anyway. My therapist was thrilled. We'd been working together via Zoom for 4 years now, and she'd watched me go from housebound to employed. "What do you think made the difference?" she asked during one session. "The climbing?" "But why climbing specifically? You tried other forms of exercise. Yoga didn't help. Running didn't help. What's different about climbing?" I thought about it. Climbing requires complete presence. When you're on a wall, you can't think about anything else. Your brain has to focus on the immediate physical task. There's no room for anxious thoughts about the future or rumination about the past. It's just you and the rock and the next move. So it's a form of forced mindfulness? Kind of. But it's also about fear management. Climbing is scary, objectively scary, but it's a fear with clear rules. If you grip the hold correctly, if you place your feet right, if you trust your equipment, you'll be okay. It's controllable fear. And practicing that helped me understand that most of my panic was about uncontrollable fear. Fear of fear itself. Climbing taught me that I could feel afraid and still function, that fear doesn't have to be paralyzing. She nodded. You've essentially been doing prolonged exposure therapy, but instead of exposing yourself to panic triggers, you've been exposing yourself to controlled fear, and that's generalized to other areas of your life. It had generalized. I could take the subway now. Still felt anxiety sometimes, but it didn't spiral into full panic. I could go to restaurants, stores, crowded spaces. I could function in the world again, not without effort. I still had bad days, still had moments where the panic tried to resurface. But I had tools now, skills, confidence from knowing I'd faced down fear on a regular basis and survived. My parents came to watch me climb one day. I'd invited them nervously. Not sure they'd come, not sure what they'd think. But they showed up, sat in the viewing area, and watched me lead a 5:10 route, something that would have been impossible 2 years earlier. When I came down, my mom hugged me tight. Mija, I'm so proud of you. My dad was quieter. This is what helped? Climbing rocks? Yeah, Poppy, I know it doesn't make sense. No, I get it. You needed something to push against. Something real, not just your own head. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pride? Relief? Regret that he hadn't understood sooner? You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Coming from him, from a man who'd crossed borders and worked construction and never complained, that meant everything. I'm 30 now. 5 years since that first panic attack on the L train. 2 years since I walked into Brooklyn Boulders by accident and found something that saved me. I'm not cured. I still have anxiety. Still have bad days where leaving the apartment feels impossible. Still carry Xanax in my bag for emergencies. But I'm not ruled by panic anymore. I have a life again. A job I love. Friends who climb with me. Plans for the future that extend beyond just surviving the next day. Last month, I climbed my first 511. It took 6 attempts. I fell repeatedly, got frustrated, almost gave up. But on the 6th try, I made it. Stood at the top of the route with chalk-covered hands and burning forearms and looked down at Zoe, who taught me to climb 2 years ago, who'd become a close friend. And I saw her grinning up at me. You did it, she shouted. I did it. Climbed a route that 2 years ago would have been literally impossible for me. Not just physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically impossible. People ask me sometimes how rock climbing cured my panic disorder. I have to tell them it didn't cure it. Panic disorder doesn't really get cured. You manage it. You learn to live with it. You develop skills and strategies and support systems that help you function despite it. But climbing gave me something specific that nothing else had. It taught me that I could be terrified and still perform. That fear doesn't have to equal paralysis. That I could feel my heart racing and my hands shaking and my breath coming short and still make the next move. Clip the next quick draw. Trust the next hold. It taught me that fear has different flavors. The fear of climbing, immediate, physical, based on actual present danger, is different from the fear of panic disorder, which is diffuse and abstract and based on the threat of fear itself. And practicing with one type of fear helped me manage the other. It taught me about presence. When you're 40 feet up a wall with nothing but your grip and your breath, you can't be anywhere else mentally. You can't catastrophize about the future or ruminate about the past. You're here, now, on this rock, making this move. That forced presence was medicine for a brain that spent 5 years catastrophizing about everything, and it taught me about community. Climbing is individual in execution, but communal in spirit. Climbers belay each other, share beta, celebrate successes, commiserate over failures. I'd spent 3 years isolated, convinced I was the only person struggling like this. The climbing community showed me I wasn't alone. Lots of people climb for mental health reasons. Lots of people use it to manage anxiety, depression, trauma, addiction. We were all there, holding each other's ropes, keeping each other safe, pushing each other to try one more route. I teach beginner classes now at Brooklyn Boulders. I see people come in, some curious, some dragged by friends, some desperate like I was. And sometimes I can spot the ones who need climbing for reasons beyond fitness or fun. The ones whose hands shake a little too much, who look at the wall with fear that's about more than falling, who ask quiet questions about whether they'll be able to do this. I tell them what Zoe told me. Don't overthink it. Just move. Your body knows what to do, and I tell them what I've learned. Climbing won't cure whatever you're dealing with, but it might give you tools, might teach you that you're stronger than you think, might show you that fear doesn't have to be the final word. Last week, a woman came in for an intro session, mid-20s, visibly nervous, kept asking if it was safe, if she'd fall, what happens if she can't do it. After the session, she approached me at the desk. "Can I ask you something? Do you get panic attacks?" I looked at her, saw myself 5 years ago, saw the desperation poorly hidden behind casual interest. "I used to. Why?" "I've been having them for about a year. Can't go most places. Saw this gym when I was trying to walk around my block and thought, I don't know, maybe something physical would help. It might. It helped me." "Really?" "Really. Come back tomorrow. Try it again. Don't expect it to be a magic cure, but give it a real shot. See if it does, for you, what it did for me." She came back, and the next day, and the next. 3 weeks later, she's climbing 5.6 and smiling more. I don't know if climbing will save her the way it saved me. Everyone's different. Everyone's brain is different. But I know this. Sometimes we need to choose a fear we can see over a fear we can't. Sometimes we need to redirect the terror into something tangible. Sometimes we need to get 40 feet off the ground with nothing but our grip and our breath to remember that we're stronger than we think we are. My name is Maya Ortiz. I'm 30 years old. For 5 years, I was controlled by panic disorder that made my world smaller and smaller until I was barely living. 2 years ago, I walked into a climbing gym by accident and found a way back to life. I'm not cured. I'm not fearless. I still struggle. But I'm climbing, literally and figuratively, making moves, taking risks, falling sometimes and getting back on the wall. And for someone who spent 3 years unable to leave her apartment, that's everything. If you've struggled with anxiety or panic disorder, or if you found an unexpected way to manage your mental health, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Sometimes the things that save us aren't the things we'd expect. And if you want more stories about finding unconventional paths to healing, a like or subscribe would mean a lot. Thank you for reading and for understanding that recovery isn't linear. It's more like climbing. Sometimes you fall, but you tie back in and try again.